All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another stream of the Goodnight reading series for Jane Eyre. I hope you guys are all excited to be here and to learn more of Jane's story. So, where we last left off last time is that Jane finally met Mr. Rochester formally. Last time, well, her first time meeting him, he had an accident on a road going back to Thornfield, and she didn't realize it at the time that he was Mr. Rochester. And so she gets back to the house and she finally meets him. And he's a little intense and a little strange, but he's not intense in a way of trying to be bad. He's just a man who's been through a lot of things and has had a lot of things taken from him. But I won't give it away, so you'll find out what that's about as we read along. And he ends up having a conversation with Jane that's very interesting. It's very strange and bizarre to her because she's a governess and he's 20 years older than her. He's 38 and she's 18. So remember, this is back in the day. It's definitely a different time period and it's a different set of views. Obviously, he sees himself as much older than her, but he starts having a conversation about, him having a better life and if he can be resolved of his sins and things that he could potentially do to absolve himself of those said sins. And, he's kind of a little difficult to understand, at least in Jane's perspective, because he's kind of like talking and like rhyming in a sense, but not so much rhyming. And she's just kind of like, okay, this is definitely different. And I think this conversation's a little much, but still, they had that conversation anyway. And that's kind of where we left off. So she finished with meeting him formally and actually having a real conversation about things. And that's kind of where we are right now. So Jane is now have really had a conversation with the mysterious Mr. Rochester of Thornfield. And she's just continuing on as, being the governess for Adele, a girl that Mr. Rochester has taken in as a ward of his. And that's kind of where we are. So who knows what next conversation Mr. Rochester will have, but we'll find out pretty sure enough. So with that being said, let's sally forth. Chapter 14. Mr. Rochester did, on a future occasion, explain it. It was one afternoon when he chanced to meet me and Adele in the grounds, and while she played with Pilot and her shuttlecock, he asked me to walk up and down a long beech avenue within sight of her. He then said that she was the daughter of a French opera dancer, Céline Varnes, and towards whom he had once cherished what he called a grand passion. This passion Céline had professed to return with even superior ardor. He thought himself her idol, ugly as he was. He believed, as he said, that she preferred his télé d'athlète to the elegance of the Apollo and Belvedere. And Miss Eyre, so much was I flattered by this preference of the Gallic's life for her British gnome, that I instilled her in a hotel and gave her a complete establishment of servants, a carriage, cashmeres, diamonds, dentelles, and all the sort. So in short, I began the process of ruining myself, and received the style. Like any other spoony, I had not, it seems, the originality to chalk out a new road to shame and destruction, but trod the old track with stupid exactness, not to deviate an inch from the beaten centre. I had, as I deserved to have, a fate of all the other spoonies. Happening to call one evening when Céline did not expect me, I found her out. But it was a warm night, and I was tired with strolling through Paris, and so sat down in her boudoir, happy to breathe the air consecrated so lately by her presence. No, I exaggerate. I never thought that there was any consecrating virtue about her. It was rather a sort of pastille perfume that she had left, a scent of musk and amber, than an odd odor of sanctity. I was just beginning to stifle the fumes of the conservatory flowers and the sprinkled essences, when I bethought myself to open the window and step out onto the balcony. It was moonlight, and gaslight besides, and still and serene. The balcony was furnished with a chair or two, so I sat down. And then I took out a cigar. I will take one now, if you will excuse me. Here ensued a pause, filled up by the producing and the lighting of a cigar. Having placed it to his lips and breathed a trail of Havana incense on the freezing and sunlit air, he went on. I liked baboons, too, in those days, Miss Eyre, and I was a croquant chocolate confits, and smoking alternative, and watching in the meantime the equipages that rolled along the fashionable streets towards the neighboring opera house, when in an elegant close carriage drawn by a beautiful pair of English horses and distinctly seen in a brilliant city night, I recognized the voiture, and I had given Celine. She was returning. Of course, my heart thumped with impatience against the iron rails that I leant upon. The carriage then stopped, as I had expected, at the hotel door. My flame was alighted, though muffled in a cloak, an unnecessary encumbrance by the by. So on a warm June evening, I knew her instantly by her little foot, seen peeping from the skirt of her dress, as she skipped from the carriage step. Bending over the balcony, I was about to murmur, Mon ange, in a tone, of course, which would be audible to the ear of love only, when a figure jumped from the carriage after her, and he was also cloaked. But that was a spurred heel on the rung of the pavement, and that was a hatted head which now passed under the arched porch of the hotel. You never felt jealousy, did you, Miss Eyre? Of course not. I need not ask you, because you never felt love. You have known sentiments yet to experience. Your soul sleeps. The shock is yet to be given, which shall awaken it. You think all existence lasts in a quiet of a flow in which your youth has hitherto slid away, floating on with closed eyes and muffled ears. You neither see the rocks bristling not far off the bed of the flood, nor hear the breakers, the boil at their base. But I tell you, and you may mark my words, you will come some day to a craggy pass in the channel where the whole of life's stream will be broken up into a whirl and tumult and foam and noise. Either you will be dashed to the atoms on the crag points, or lifted up and borne on by some master wave into a calmer current, as I now am. I like this day. I like that sky of steel. I like the sternness and the stillness of the world under this frost. I like Thornfield and its antiquity, its retirement, its old crow trees and thorn trees, its gray facade and lines of dark windows reflecting that metal welkin. And yet, how long have I abhorred the very thought of it, shunned it like a great plague house. How I do still abhor. He ground his teeth and was silent. He arrested his step and struck his boot against the hard ground. Some hated the thought that seemed that he to have had in his grip, and to hold him so tightly that he could not advance. We were ascending the avenue when he thus paused. The hall was before us. Lifting his eye to its battlements, he cast over them a glare such as I had never saw before or since. Pain, shame, ire, impatience, disgust, detestation seemed momentarily to hold a quivering conflict in the large pupil dilating under his ebon brow. Wild was the wrestle which should be paramount, but another feeling rose and triumphed. Something hard and cynical, self-willed and resolute. It settled his passion and petrified his countenance. He went on. During the moment I was silent, Miss Eyre, I was arranging a point with my destiny. She stood there by that beech trunk, a hag like one of those who appeared to be Macbeth on the heath of Forez. Oh, you like Thornfield? She said, lifting her finger, and then she wrote in the air a memento, which ran in a lurid hieroglyph all along the house front, between the upper and the lower row of the windows. Like if you can, like if you dare. And then I said, I will like it, and I dare like it. I will keep my word, and I will break obstacles to happiness, to goodness, yes, goodness. I wish to be a better man than I have been, than I am. As Job's Leviathan broke the spear, the dart, and the habergeon, hindrances which others count as iron and brass, I will esteem but straw rotten and wood. Adele here ran before him with her shuttlecock. Away, he cried harshly. Keep at a distance, child, or go to Sophie. Continuing, then, to pursue his walk in silence, I ventured to recall him to the point whence he had abruptly diverged. Did you leave the balcony, sir? I asked, when Madame Varnes entered. I almost expected a rebuff for this hardly well-timed question, but on the contrary, walking out of his scowling abstraction, he turned his eyes towards me, and the shade seemed to clear off his brow. Oh, I had forgotten Céline. Well, to resume. When I saw my charmer thus come in, accompanied by a cavalier, I seemed to hear a hiss and the green snake of jealousy rising on the undulating coils from the moonlit balcony, and glided with my waistcoat, and ate its way in 2 minutes to my heart's core. So strange, he exclaimed, suddenly starting again from the point. Strange that I should choose you for the confidant of all this, young lady. Passing strange that thing in the world for a man like me to tell stories of his upper mistress to a quaint, inexperienced girl like you. But the last singularity explains the first. As I had intimated before, you, with your gravity and your considerateness and caution, were made to be the recipient of secrets. Besides, I know what sort of mind that I have placed in the communication with my own. I know it is one not liable to take infection. It is a peculiar mind. It is a unique one. Happily, I do not mean to harm it, but if I did, it would not harm from me. The more you and I converse, the better, for while I cannot blight you, you may refresh me. After this digression, he proceeded. I remained in that balcony. They will come to her boudoir, no doubt, that I thought to myself. And then I decided that I would prepare for an ambush. So putting my hand in through the open window, I drew the curtain over it, leaving only an opening through which I could take observations. Then I closed the casement, all but a chink just wide enough to furnish an outlet to lovers, and whispered vows. Then I stole back to my chair, and as I resumed it, the pair came in. My eye was quickly at the aperture. Céline's chambermaid entered, lit a lamp and left it on the table, and then withdrew. The couple were thus revealed to me clearly. Both removed their cloaks, and there was the Varnes, shining in satin and jewels, my gifts, of course. And there was her companion in her officer's uniform, and I knew him for a young rogue of a vicomte, a brainless and vicious youth, whom I had sometimes met in society, and had never thought of hating because I despised him so absolutely. On recognizing him, the fang of the snake of jealousy was instantly broken, because at that exact moment my love for Céline sank under an extinguisher. A woman who could betray me for such a rival was not worth contending for. She deserved only scorn, less, however, than I, who had been her dupe. Of course, they began to talk. Their conversation eased me completely. It was frivolous, mercenary, heartless, and senseless. It was rather calculated to weary than enrage a listener. A card of mine lay on the table. This being perceived brought my name under discussion. Neither of them possessed energy or wit to belabor me soundly, but they insulted me as coarsely as they could in their little way, especially Céline, who even waxed rather brilliantly on my personal defects, the deformities as she termed them. Now, it had been her custom to launch out into the fervent admiration of what she called my beauté mâle, wherein she differed diametrically from you, who told me point blank at the second interview that you did not think me handsome. The contrast struck me at that time, and Adele here came running up again.
Monsieur, John has been to say that your agent has called and wishes to see you.
Ah, in that case I must abridge. So, in opening the window, I walked in upon them and liberated Celine from my protection, and gave her notice to vacate her hotel, and then I offered her a purse for her immediate eccentricities, and disregarded her screams, hysterics, and prayers, protestations, convulsions, and made an appointment with the Vicomte for a meeting at the Bourgeois de Boulogne. Next morning I had the pleasure of encountering him, and left a bullet in one of his poor, etiolated arms, feeble as the wing of a chicken in the pip, and then thought as I had done with the whole crew. But unluckily, the Varnes, 6 months before, had given me this filette Adele, who now she affirmed was my daughter, and perhaps she may be, though I see no proofs of such grim paternity written in her countenance. Pilot is more like me than she. Some years after I had broken with the mother, she abandoned her child and ran away to Italy with a musician or singer of some sort. I acknowledge no natural claim on Adele's part to be supported by me, nor do I now acknowledge any, for I am not her father, but hearing that she was quite destitute, I even took the poor thing out of the slime and the mud of Paris, and transplanted it here, to grow up clean in the wholesome soil of an English country garden. Mrs. Fairfax found you to train it, but now that you know that the illegitimacy of this offspring is from that of a French opera girl, you will perhaps think differently of your post and protégé. You will be coming to me some day with the notice that you have found another place, that you beg me to look out for a new governess, eh?
No, Adele is not answerable for either her mother's faults or yours. I have a regard for her, and now that I know what she is, and, in a sense, is parentless, forsaken by her mother and disowned by you, sir, I shall cling closer to her than before. How could I possibly prefer the spoilt pelt of a wealthy family, who would hate her governess as a nuisance, to that of a lonely little orphan, who leans toward her as a friend?
Oh, but that is the light in which you view it. Well, I must go now, and you too. It darkens.
But I stayed a few minutes longer with Adele and Pilot. We ran a race and played a game of battledore and shuttlecock. When we went in and I had removed her bonnet and cloak, I took her on my knee and kept her there an hour or so, allowing her to prattle as she liked, not rebuking even some of the little freedoms and trivialities to which she was apt to stray when much noticed and much betrayed in her superficiality of character, inherited probably from her mother, hardly congenial to an English mind. Still, she had her merits, and I was disposed to appreciate all that good that was in her. I sought in her countenance and the features a likeness to that of Mr. Rochester, but found none, no trait, no turn of expression, no announced relationship. It was a pity, and if she could have been proved to resemble him, he would have thought more of her. It was not till after that I had withdrawn to my own chamber for the night that I steadily reviewed the tale that Mr. Rochester had told me. As he had said, there was probably nothing at all extraordinary in the substance of the narrative itself. A wealthy Englishman's passion for a French dancer, and her treachery to him, were everyday matters enough, no doubt, and in society, but there was something decidedly strange in the paroxysm of emotion which had suddenly seized him when he was in the act of expressing the present contentment of his mood, and his newly revived pleasure in the old hall and its environs. I meditated wonderingly on this incident, but gradually quitting it, as I found it for the more present inexplicable. I turned to the consideration of my master's manner to myself. The confidence that he thought fit to repose in me seemed a tribute to my discretion. I regarded and accepted it as such. His deportment had now for some weeks been more uniform towards me than at first. I never seemed in his way, and he did not take fits of chilling hauteur. and when he met me unexpectedly, the encounter seemed welcome. He had always a word and sometimes a smile for me, and when summoned by formal invitation to his presence, I was honored by a cordiality of reception that made me feel as if I really possessed the power to amuse him, and that these evening conferences were sought as much for his pleasure as for my own benefit. I indeed talked comparatively little, but I heard him talk with relish. It was his nature to be communicative. He liked to open his mind unacquainted with the world glimpses of his scenes and the ways, and I had keen delight in receiving the new ideas that he had offered, and in imagining the new pictures that he portrayed, and following him in thought and through the new regions that he disclosed, never startled or troubled by one noxious illusion. The ease of his manner freed me from painful restraint, the friendly frankness, as correct as cordial, but with which he treated me, he drew me to him. I felt at times as if he were my relation rather than my master, yet he was imperious sometimes still. But I did not mind that. I saw that he was in his own way, and that he was so happy and gratified that I did become with this new interest, and that, added to this life, that I ceased to pine after the kindred. My thin crescent destiny seemed to enlarge. The banks of existence were filled up. My bodily health improved, and I gathered flesh and strength. And was Mr. Rochester now ugly in my eyes? Oh no, reader. Gratitude and many associations, all pleasurable and genial, made his face the object I best liked to see. His presence in a room was more cheering than the brightest fire. Yet I had not forgotten his faults. Indeed, I could not, for he brought them frequently before me. He was proud, sardonic, harsh to inferiority of every description. In my secret soul, I knew that his great kindness to me was balanced by unjust severity to many others. He was moody, too, unaccountably so. I, more than once, when sent for to read to him, found him sitting in his library alone, with his head bent on his folded arms, and when he looked up, almost a malignant and scowl blackened that was so deep in his features. But then I believed that his moodiness, his harshness, and his former faults of morality had their source in some cruel cross of fate. I believed that he was naturally a man of better tendencies, higher principles, and purer taste than that such as circumstances had developed, and he had education instilled or destiny encouraged. I thought that there was an excellent material in him, though for the present they hung together somewhat spoiled and tangled. I cannot deny that I grieved for his grief, whatever that was, and would have given much to assuage it. Though I had now extinguished my candle and was laid down in bed, I could not sleep for thinking of his look when he paused in the avenue, and told how his destiny had risen up before him, and dared him to be happy at Thornfield. Why not? I asked myself. What alienates him from the house? Will he leave it soon again? Mrs. Fairfax said that he seldom stayed here longer than a fortnight at a time, and that he has now been resident at least 8 weeks. If he does go, the change will be doleful. Suppose that he should be absent during spring, summer, and autumn. Oh, how joyless sunshine and fine days will seem! I hardly know whether I slept or not after this musing. At any rate, I started wide awake on hearing a vague murmur, peculiar and lugubrious, which it sounded, I thought, just above me. I wished that I had kept my candle burning. The night was drearily dark. My spirits were depressed, and I rose and sat up in bed, listening. The sound was hushed. I tried again to sleep, but my heart beat anxiously. My inward tranquillity was broken. The clock far down the hall struck 2. Just then, it seemed my character was going to be touched, and that my chamber door was going to be opened, as if fingers had swept along the panels and groping away. And then I said, "Who is there?" Nothing answered in return. I was chilled with fear. All at once I remembered that it might be Pilot, who, when the kitchen door's chamber. I had seen him lying there myself in the mornings. The idea calmed me somewhat. so I laid down. Silence composes the nerves, and as an unbroken hush now reigned again through the whole house, I began to feel the return of slumber. But it was not fated that I should sleep that night. A dream had scarcely approached my ear when it fled affrighted, scared by a narrow, freezing incident enough. This was a demonic laugh, low, suppressed, and deep, uttered as it seemed at the very keyhole of my chamber door. The head of my bed was near the door, and I thought at first that the goblin laughter stood at my bedside, or rather crouched by my pillow. But I rose and looked around, and could see nothing. And then as I still gazed, the unnatural sound was reiterated, and I knew it. I knew it came from behind the panels. My first impulse was to rise and fasten the bolt. My next began to cry out, "Who is there?" Something gurgled and then moaned. Ere long steps retreated up the gallery towards the third-story staircase. A door had been made well to shut in on that staircase, and then I heard it open and close. Suddenly all was still. Was that Grace Poole? And is she posed with the devil? I thought. It was impossible now to remain longer by myself. I must go to Mrs. Fairfax. I hurried on my frock and my shawl, and I withdrew the bolt and opened the door with a trembling hand, and there was a candle burning just outside, and on the matting in the gallery. I was surprised at this circumstance, but more was I amazed to perceive the air of quite dim, as if filled with smoke, and while looking to the right hand and to the left to find whence these blue wreaths issued, I became further aware of a strong smell of burning. Something creaked. It was a door ajar, and that door was Mr. Rochester's, and the smoke rushed in a cloud from thence. I thought no more of Mrs. Fairfax. I thought no more of Grace Poole or the laugh, and in an instant I was within the chamber. Tongues of flame darted around the bed. The curtains were on fire, and in the midst of the blaze and vapor, Mr. Rochester lay stretched motionless and in a deep sleep. "Oh, wake up, I cried, and I shook him, but he only murmured and turned. The smoke had stupefied him. Not a moment could be lost. The very sheets were kindling, and I rushed to his basin and ewer. Fortunately, one was wide and the other deep, and both were filled with water. I heaved them up and deluged the bed and its occupant, and flew back to my own room and brought my own water jug, and baptized the couch afresh, and by God's aid succeeded in extinguishing the flames which were devouring it. The hiss of the quenched element, and the breakage of a pitcher which I flung from my hand when I emptied it, and above all, the splash of the shower bath that I had liberally bestowed, roused Mr. Rochester at last. Though it was now dark, I knew that he was awake, because I heard him fulminating strange anathemas at finding himself lying in a pool of water. "By God, is there a flood?" he cried. "No, sir," I answered, "but there has been a fire. Get up, do so. You are quenched now. Oh, I'll fetch you a candle." "And what in the name of the elves and Christendom is that Jane Eyre that I hear?" he demanded. "What have you done with me, witch, sorceress? Who is in the room besides you? Have you plotted to drown me?" "Please, I will fetch you a candle, sir, and in heaven's name get up. Somebody has plotted something, and you cannot soon be able to find out who it is." "There, I am up now, but at your peril you fetch a candle yet. Wait 2 minutes until I get some dry garments, if it dry any there may be. Yes, here's my dressing gown. Now run." I did run, and I brought the candle, which it still remained in the gallery. He took it from my hand and held it up and surveyed the bed. All blackened and scorched, the sheets were drenched, and the carpet round was swimming in water. "What is this, and who did it?" he asked. I briefly related to him what had transpired, the strange laugh that I heard in the gallery, the step ascending to the third story, the smoke, the smell of fire which had conducted me to his room, in what state I had found matters there, and how that I had deluged him with all the water that I could lay my hands on. He listened very gravely. His face, as I went on, expressed more concern than astonishment, and he did not immediately speak when I had concluded. "Shall I call Mrs. Fairfax?" I asked.
"Mrs. Fairfax? No. What the deuce would you call her for? What can she do? Let her sleep unmolested."
"Then I will fetch Leah and wake John and his wife."
"Not at all. Just be still. You have a shawl on, and if you are not warm enough, you may take my cloak yonder. Wrap it about you and sit down in the armchair. There, I will put it on. Now place your feet on the stool and keep them out of the wet. I'm going to leave you a few minutes. I shall take the candle. Now remain where you are until I return, and be still as a mouse. I must pay a visit to the second story. Don't move. Remember, or even call anyone."
As he went, I watched the light withdraw. He passed up the gallery very softly, unclosed the staircase door with a little noise as possible, and then it shut after him, and the last ray vanished. I was left in total darkness. I listened for some noise, but heard nothing. A very long time elapsed, and I grew weary. It was cold, and in spite of the cloak, and then I did not see the use of staying, as I was not to rouse the house. I was on the point of risking Mr. Rochester's displeasure by disobeying his orders, when the light once more gleamed dimly on the gallery wall, and I heard his unshod foot treading the matting. "I hope it is he," I thought, "and not something worse." He re-entered, pale and very gloomy.
"I have found out all," he said, setting his candle down on the washstand. "It is as I thought."
"How so, sir?" He made no reply, but stood with his arms folded and looking on the ground. At the end of a few minutes he inquired in a rather peculiar tone,
"I forget whether you said that you saw anything when you opened the chamber door."
"No, sir, only the candlestick on the ground."
"But you heard an odd laugh. You have heard that laugh before, I should think, or something like it."
"Yes. There is a woman who sews here called Grace Poole. She laughs in that way and is a singular person."
"Just so. Grace Poole, you have guessed it. She is, as you may say, regular and singular, very much so. Well, I shall reflect on the subject. Meantime, I am glad that you are the only person besides myself acquainted with the precise details of tonight's incident. You are no talking fool, so say nothing about it. I will account for this state of affairs," he said, pointing to the bed. "And now, return to your own room. I shall do very well on the sofa in the library for the rest of the night. It is near 4, and in 2 hours the servants will be up."
"Good night, sir," I said, departing, and he seemed surprised, very inconsistently so, as he had just told me to go.
"What?" he exclaimed. "Are you quitting me already, and in just that way?"
"You said I might go, sir."
"But not without taking leave, not without a word or two of acknowledgment and goodwill, not, in short, that in the brief, dry fashion. Why, you have saved my life, snatched me from a horrible and excruciating death, and you walk past me as if we were mutual strangers. At least shake hands."
He held out his hand, and I gave him mine. He took it first in one, them in both of his hand.
"You have saved my life. I have a pleasure in owing you so much of an immense debt. I cannot say more. Nothing else would have been tolerable to me in the character of creditor for such an obligation but you. It is different. I feel your benefits no burden, Jane." He paused and gazed at me. Words almost visible trembled on his lips, but his voice was checked.
"Good night, then, sir. There is no doubt benefit, burden, obligation in the case."
"I knew," he continued, "you would do me good in some way at some time. I saw it in your eyes when I first beheld you. Their expression and smile did not—"
Again he stopped.
"Did not," he proceeded hastily, "strike delight to my very most inner heart for nothing. People talk of natural sympathies. I have a heart of a good genie. There are grains of truth in the wildest fable, my cherished preserver. Good night." Strange energy was in his voice, strange fire in his look. "I am glad that I happened to be awake," I said, and then was going. "Wait. You will go?" "I am cold, sir." "Cold, yes, and standing in a pool. Go then, Jane, go." He still remained at my hand, and I could not free it. I bethought myself of an expedient. I think I hear Mrs. Fairfax moving, sir," I said. "Well, leave me." He relaxed his fingers, and I was gone. I regained my couch, but never thought of sleep. Till morning I dawned on the idea, and was tossed about in a buoyant, unquiet sea where billows of trouble rolled under surges of joy. I thought sometimes that I saw beyond its wild waters a shore, sweet as the hills of Belua, and now and then a freshening gale, wakened by hope, bore my spirit triumphantly forwards, and then borne. But I could not reach it, not even in infancy. A counteracting breeze blew off the land and continually drove me back. Sense would resist delirium, judgment would warn passion. Too feverish to rest, I rose as soon as day dawned. Chapter 16. I both wished and feared to see Mr. Rochester on the day which followed the sleepless night. I wanted to hear his voice again, yet feared to meet his eye. During the early part of the morning, I momentarily expected his coming. He was not in the frequent habit of entering the schoolroom, but he did not step in for a few minutes sometimes, and I had the impression that he was sure to visit that day. But the morning passed just as usual. Nothing happened to interrupt the quiet course of Adele's studies. Only soon after breakfast I heard some bustle in the neighborhood of Mr. Rochester's chamber. Mrs. Fairfax's voice, and Leah's, and the cook's, and that is John's wife, and even John's own gruff tones. There were exclamations of, "What a mercy that the master wasn't burnt in his bed! It is always dangerous to keep a candle lit at night. How providential that he had a present of mind to use the water jug. I wonder how he waked nobody. It is to be and hoped that he will not take cold with sleeping on the library sofa." To much confabulation succeeded a sound of scrubbing and setting to rights, and when I passed the room in going downstairs to dinner, I saw through the open door that all was again restored to complete order. Only the bed was stripped of its hangings. Leah stood up in the window seat, rubbing the panes of glass dimmed with smoke. I was about to address her, for which I wished to know what account had been given of the affair. But on advancing, I saw a second person in the chamber, a woman sitting on a chair by the bedside and sewing rings into the new curtains. That woman was no other than Grace Poole. There she sat, staid and taciturn looking, as usual in her brown stuff gown, her check apron, her white handkerchief and cap. She was intent on her work, and in which her whole thoughts seemed absorbed. On her hard forehead and in her commonplace features was nothing either of the paleness or desperation one would have expected to see the marking of the countenance of a woman who attempted murder, and whose intended victim had followed her last night to her lair, and as I believed, charged her with the crime that she wished to perpetuate. I was amazed, confounded, and then she looked up, while I still gazed at her. No start, no increase or failure of color betrayed emotion, consciousness of guilt, or fear of detection. She said, "Good morning, miss," in her usual phlegmic and brief manner, and taking up another ring and more tape, went on with her sewing. I will put her to some test, I thought to myself. Such absolute impenetrability is past comprehension. "Good morning, Grace," I said. "Has anything happened here? I thought I heard the servants all talking together a while ago." "Only the master has been reading in his bed last night. He fell asleep with a candle lit and the curtains caught on fire, but fortunately he woke before the bedclothes or the woodwork caught, and contrived to quench the flames with the water in the ewer."
A strange affair, I said in a low voice. Then, looking at her fixedly, did Mr. Rochester wake nobody? Did no one hear him move? She again raised her eyes to me, and this time there was something of consciousness in their expression. She seemed to examine me wearily, and then she answered, "The servants sleep far off, you know, miss. They would not be likely to hear. Mrs. Fairfax's room and yours are the nearest to the master's. But Mrs. Fairfax said that she had heard nothing. When people get elderly, they often sleep heavy." She paused and then added with a sort of amused indifference, but was still in a marked and significant tone, "But you are young, miss, and I should say a light sleeper, perhaps, and that maybe you have heard a noise." "I did," I said. So then I also looked, and I saw that Leah had been polishing the panes, and that she could not hear the conversation. At first I thought that it was Pilot, but Pilot cannot laugh, and I am certain I heard a laugh, and a strange one. She took a new needleful of thread and waxed it carefully, and threaded her needle with a steady hand, and then observed with perfect composure, "It is hardly likely master would laugh. I should think, miss, that when he was in such danger, you must have been dreaming." "I was not dreaming," I said with some warmth, for her brazen coolness provoked me. Again she looked at me, and with the same scrutinizing and conscious eye. "Have you told the master that you heard a laugh?" she inquired. I had not the opportunity of speaking with him this morning. "You did not think of opening your door and looking out into the gallery?" she further questioned. She appeared to be cross-questioning me, attempting to draw from me information unawares. The idea struck me that if she discovered that I knew or suspected her guilt, she would be playing at some of her malignant pranks on me, and I thought it would be advisable to be on my guard. "On the contrary," I said, "I bolted my door." "Then ye are not in the habit of bolting your door every night before ye go into bed." Fiend! She wants to know my habits, and that she may lay her plans accordingly. The indignation again prevailed over prudence, and I replied sharply, "Hitherto I have often omitted to fasten the bolt. I did not think it necessary. I was not aware of any danger or annoyance was to be dreaded at Thornfield Hall. But in future I shall take good care to make sure all is secure before I venture to lie down." "It will be wise to do so," was her response. "This neighborhood is quiet, as I know, and I never heard of the hall being attempted by robbers, since it is a house, and though there are hundreds of pounds worth of plate in the plate closet, it is all well known. And you see, for such a large house, there are very few servants, because master has never lived here much, and when he does come, being a bachelor, he needs little waiting on. But I always think it best to err on the safe side. A door is soon fastened, and it is well to have a drawn bolt between one and any mischief that may be about. A deal of people, miss, are for trusting all to Providence, but I say Providence will not dispense with the means, though he often blesses them when they are used discreetly." And here she closed her harangue, a long one for her, and uttered with the demureness of a Quakeress. I still stood absolutely dumbfounded at what appeared to me to be her miraculous self-possession and most inscrutable hypocrisy, when the cook then entered. "Miss Poole," she said, addressing Grace, "the servants' dinner will be ready soon, and will you come down?" "No, just point a pint of porter and a bit of pudding on a tray, and I'll carry it upstairs." "You'll have some meat?" "Just a morsel and a taste of cheese, that's all." "And the sago?" "Never mind it at present. I shall be coming down before tea time, and I'll make it myself." The cook here turned to me, saying that Mrs. Fairfax was waiting for me, so I had departed. I hardly heard Mrs. Fairfax's account of the current conflagration during dinner. So much was I occupied in puzzling my brains over the enigmatical character of Grace Poole, and still more in pondering the problem of her position, and questioning why she had not been given into custody that morning, or at the very least dismissed from her master's service. He had almost as much as declared her conviction of her criminality last night. What mysterious cause kept him from accusing her? Why had he enjoined me, too, to the secrecy? It was strange. A bold, vindictive, and haughty gentleman seemed to somehow in the power of one of the meanest of his dependents, so much in her power that even when she lifted her hand against his life, he dared not openly charge her with the attempt, much less punish her for it. Had Grace been young and handsome, I should have been tempted to think that tenderer feelings than prudence or fear influenced Mr. Rochester in her behalf. But hard-favored and matronly as she was, the idea could not be admitted. Yet, I reflected, she has been young once, and her youth would be contemporary with her master's. Mrs. Fairfax had told me once that she had lived here many years. I don't think that she can ever have been pretty, but for aught, and that she may have possessed originality and strength of character to compensate for the want of personal advantage. Mr. Rochester is an amateur of the decided and the eccentric. Grace is eccentric at least. What if a former caprice was delivered him into her power, and she now exercises over his actions a secret influence, and the result of his own indiscretion, which he cannot shake off and dare not disregard? But having reached the point of conjecture, Mrs. Poole's square, flat figure and uncomely, dry, even coarse face recurred so distinctly in my mind's eye that I thought, no, that it would be impossible. My supposition cannot be correct, yet. And then I suggested the secret voice which talks to us in our own hearts, that I myself am not beautiful either, and that perhaps Mr. Rochester approves of me at any rate, as I have often felt as if he did. And last night I remember his words, and I remember his look, and I remember his voice. I well remembered all. Language, glance, and tone seemed at the moment vividly renewed. I was now in the schoolroom. Adele was drawing. I bent over her and directed her pencil. She looked up with a sort of start. "Que avez-vous, mademoiselle?" she said. "Vos doigts tremblent comme le fond, et vos joues sont rouges comme des cerises." "I am hot, Adele, with stooping." She went on sketching, and I went on thinking. I hastened to drive from my mind the hateful notion that I had been conceiving that the respecting Grace Poole, and it disgusted me. I compared myself with her and found that we were different. Bessie Leaven had said that I was quite a lady, and that she had spoken truth. I was a lady, and now I looked much better than I did when Bessie saw me. I had more color and more flesh and more life, more vivacity, because I had brighter hopes and keener enjoyments. "Evening approaches," said I, as I looked towards the window. "I have never heard Mr. Rochester's voice or step into the house today, but I shall see him before night. I feared the meeting in the morning, and now I desire it, because expectation has been so long baffled that it has grown impatient." When dusk actually closed, and when Adele left me to go and play in the nursery with Sophie, I did most keenly desire it. I listened for the bell to ring below, and I listened for Leah coming up with a message. I fancied sometimes that I heard Mr. Rochester's own tread, and I turned to the door, expecting it to be open and to admit him. The door remained shut. Darkness only came through the window. Still, it was not late, and he often sent for me at 7 or 8 o'clock, and it was about yet 6. Surely I should not be wholly disappointed tonight, when I had so many things to say to him. I wanted again to introduce the subject of Grace Poole, and to hear what he would answer. I wanted to ask him plainly that if he really believed that it was she who had made last night's hideous attempt, and if so, why he kept her wickedness a secret. It little mattered whether my curiosity irritated him. I knew the pleasure of vexing and soothing him by turns. It was one I chiefly delighted in, and sure instinct always prevented me from going too far, beyond the verge of provocation. I never ventured on the extreme brink. I liked well to try my skill, retaining every minute form of respect, every propriety of my station. I could still meet him in argument without fear or uneasy restraint, and this suited both him and me. A tread creaked on the stairs at last, and Leah made her appearance, but it was only to intimate that the tea was ready in Mrs. Fairfax's room. Thither I repaired, and glad at least to go downstairs, for that brought me, as I imagined, nearer to Mr. Rochester's presence. "You must want your tea," said the good lady as I joined her. "You ate so little at dinner, I am afraid," she continued. "You are not well today. You look flushed and feverish." "Oh, quite well. I never felt better." "Then you must prove it by evincing a good appetite. Will you fill the teapot while I knit off this needle?" Having completed her task, she rose to draw down the blind, which she had hitherto kept up by way, I suppose, of making the most of daylight, though dusk was now fastening deep into the total obscurity. "It is fair tonight," she said, as she looked through the panes, "though not starlight. Mr. Rochester has, on the whole, had a very favourable day for his journey." "Journey? Is Mr. Rochester gone anywhere? I did not know he was out." "Oh, he set off in the morning after he breakfasted, and is gone to the Leas, Mr. Ashton's place, 10 miles off the other side of Millcote. I believe that there is quite a party assembled there, Lord Ingham and Sir George Lynn and Colonel Dent and others." "Do you expect him back tonight?" "No, nor tomorrow either. I should think that he is very likely to stay a week or more. When these fine fashionable people get together, they are all so surrounded by elegance and gaiety, and so well provided with all that can please and entertain, they are in no hurry to separate. Gentlemen especially are often in request on such occasions, and Mr. Rochester is so talented and so lively in society that I believe that he is a general favourite, and the ladies are very fond of him, though you would not think his appearance calculated to recommend him particularly in their eyes. But I suppose his acquirements and abilities, perhaps his wealth and good blood, make amends for any fault of look." "Are there ladies at the Leas?" "There is Mr. Ashton and Mrs. Ashton and their 3 daughters, very elegant young ladies indeed, and there are the Honourable Blanche and the Mary Ingram, most beautiful women. I suppose indeed that I have seen Blanche 6 or 7 years since, when she was a girl of 18. She came here to a Christmas ball and a party that Mr. Rochester gave. You should have seen the dining room that day. Oh, how richly it was decorated, how brilliantly lit up. I should think that there were 50 ladies and gentlemen present, all of the first county families, and Miss Ingram was considered the belle of the evening." "You saw her, you say, Miss Fairfax. What was she like?" "I saw her, yes. The dining-room doors were thrown open, and it was Christmas time. The servants were allowed to assemble in the hall to hear some of the ladies sing and play. Mr. Rochester would have had me to come in, and I sat down in a quiet corner and watched them. I never saw a more splendid scene. The ladies were magnificently dressed. Most of them, at least, were of younger ones and looked handsome, but Miss Ingram was certainly the queen." "And what was she like?" "Tall, fine bust, sloping shoulders, long, graceful neck, olive complexion, dark and clear, noble features, eyes rather like Mr. Rochester's, large and black and as brilliant as her jewels. And she had such a fine head of hair, raven black, and so becomingly arranged, a crown of thick plaits behind and in front of the longest and glossiest curls that I had ever seen. She was dressed in pure white. An amber-colored scarf was passed over her shoulder and across her own breast. I tied it at the side and descending in long fringed ends below her knee. She wore an amber-colored flower, too, in her hair, and it contrasted well with the jetty mass of her curls." "Was she greatly admired, of course?" "Oh, yes, indeed, and accompanied her on the piano. She and Mr. Rochester sang a duet." Mr. Rochester. I was not aware that he could sing. Oh, he has a fine bass voice and an excellent taste for music. And Miss Ingram, what kind of voice had she? Oh, a very rich and powerful one. She sang delightfully, and it was a treat to listen to her, and she played afterwards. I am no judge of music, but Mr. Rochester is, and I heard him say that her execution was remarkably good. And this beautiful and accomplished lady, she is not yet married. It appears not, and I fancy neither she nor her sister have very large fortunes. Old Lord Ingram's states were chiefly entailed, and the eldest son came in for everything almost. But I wonder that no wealthy nobleman or gentleman has taken fancy to her. Mr. Rochester, for instance, he is rich, is he not? Oh, yes. But, you see, there is a considerable difference in age. Mr. Rochester is nearly 40, but she is 25. And what of that? More unequal matches are made every day. True, yet I should scarcely fancy Mr. Rochester would entertain the idea of the sort. But you eat nothing. You have scarcely tasted since you have begun tea. No, I'm too thirsty to eat. Will you let me have another cup? I was about again to revert to the probability of a union between Mr. Rochester and the beautiful Blanche, but Adele came in, and the conversation was turned into another channel. When once more alone, I reviewed the information that I had received, and looked into my heart and examined its thoughts and feelings, and endeavored to bring back with it a strict hand such as that had been straying through the imagination's boundless and trackless waste into the safe fold of a common sense. Arranged at my own bar, memory having given her evidence of hope, wishes and sentiments that I had been cherishing since last night, of a general state of mind in which I indulged for nearly a fortnight past. Reason having come forward and told, in her own unique quiet way, a plain and unvarnished tale, showing how that I had rejected the real and rapidly devouring ideal, I pronounced judgment to this effect. The greater the fool than Jane Eyre had ever breathed the life, and the more fantastic idiot had ever surfeited herself on such sweet lies and swallowed poison as if it were nectar. You, I said, a favorite with Mr. Rochester, you gifted with the power of pleasing him, you of importance to him in any way, go, your folly sickens me, and you have derived pleasure from the occasional tokens of preference, equivocal tokens shown by gentlemen of family and a man of the world, of a dependent and a novice. How dared you? Poor stupid dupe! Could not even self-interest make you wiser? You repeated to yourself this morning the brief scene of last night. Oh, cover your face and be ashamed. He said something in praise of your eyes, did he? Blind puppy, open their bleared lids and look on your own accursed senselessness. It does no good to no woman to be flattered by her superior, who cannot possibly intend to marry her, and it is madness in all women to let the secret love kindle within them, which of unreturned and unknown must devour the life that feeds it, and if discovered and responded to, must lead ignis fatuus like, and into miry wilds whence there is no extrication. Listen then, Jane Eyre, to your sentence. Tomorrow place the glass before you and draw in chalk your own picture, faithfully without softening one defect, omit no harsh line, smooth away no displeasing irregularity. Write under it, the portrait of a governess, disconnected, poor, and plain. Afterwards take a piece of smooth ivory that you have once prepared in your drawing box. Take your palette and mix your freshest, finest, clearest tints. Choose your most delicate caramel hair pencils and delineate carefully the loveliest face that you can imagine. Paint it with your softest shades and sweetest lines according to the description given by Mrs. Fairfax of Blanche Ingram. Remember the raven ringlets, the oriental eye. What sentiment, no regret. I will endure only sense and resolution. Recall the august yet harmonious lineaments, the Grecian neck and the bust, Let the round and dazzling arm be visible, and the delicate hand omit neither diamond ring nor gold bracelet. Portray faithfully the attire, aerial lace and glistening satin, graceful scarf and golden rose. Call it Blanche, an accomplished lady of rank. Whenever in future should you chance to fancy Mr. Rochester and how he thinks well of you, take out these two pictures and compare them, and say, Mr. Rochester might probably win that noble lady's love if he chose to strive for it, and it is likely that he would waste a serious thought on this indignant and insignificant plebeian. I'll do it, I resolved to myself, and having framed this determination, I grew calm and fell asleep. I kept my word, and then in an hour or two sufficed a sketch of my own portrait in crayons, and in less than a fortnight I had completed an ivory miniature of the imagery of Blanche Ingram. It looked like a lovely face enough, and when compared with the real head in chalk, the contrast was great as self-control could desire. I derived benefit from the task, and it had kept my head and hands employed, and had given force and fixedness to the new impressions that I wished to stamp indelibly on my heart. Ere long I had reason to congratulate myself on the course of wholesome discipline to which I had thus forced my feelings to submit. Thanks to it, I was able to meet subsequent occurrences with a decent calm, which, had they found me unprepared, I should probably have been unequal to maintain, even externally. Ooh. All right, well, that's the end of that chapter. So if you enjoyed listening to me and hanging out and getting to hear more of the story of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, please feel free to like, subscribe, or follow. I do stream pretty regularly, and I do stream on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So that way you can catch me on one of those platforms if you're interested. And yeah, so the next time I will be streaming will be on Sunday, as I'm taking tomorrow off. Your girl's got some fun stuff planned. And yeah, until then, I hope you guys all stay safe and stay geeky as always. And bye for